have the power to bring hope and encouragement. Words have the power to bring discouragement and despair. I think we've all experienced the pain of how deep wounds words can cut into the very soul of our being. I think we've also experienced the power of words and how we have been encouraged, and somebody has made our day, just something they said made our day, made our week. Some of us have even had somebody say something and then just make our day or make our week. It's really helped provide some extra purpose in life and direction in life. And something when things are going bad, we go back to that one statement that somebody said. Maybe it was a teacher, maybe it was a parent, maybe it was a pastor or a Sunday school teacher or a clubhouse worker or something along those lines. That we go back and they said, we just hold on to that statement, we believe in you, or I believe in you. And we're like, you're going to be something. Right? Have you heard those words? Hopefully you've had the words of encouragement. Sadly, we've had probably way too many of the words of discouragement, hurtful words, cut downs. And so today, we're going to talk about this whole idea because we know, right, that the saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. We know that that's BOLOGNA. And we could even sing a song about it. My wounds have a first name. And the pain that words can cause. And so last week we started with this verse right here, these verses, as our theme verses for the series. It says, for out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. The good man brings good things out of the good stored up in him, and the evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in him. And then Jesus goes on to say that we are going to be held accountable for every careless word spoken. Every careless word spoken. We see this in Matthew chapter 12 as it's provided here. We see it also in Luke chapter 6. Words matter. And what we said last week as we talked about gossip is what you say about others says a lot about you. What you say about others says a lot about you. And it's true with gossip. It's also true when it comes to cut downs. When it comes to criticism. Now, the thing with cut downs and criticism, we think, and probably there's already those of you that are thinking, my boss really needs to hear this. I think somehow I'm going to get a recording to them, or, boy, I wish my spouse would have been here because they really could hear this. Or my parents need to hear this. We can think of others that need to hear this, right? Because they're always nitpicking. I mean, we can never do anything right. They're always yelling at us. They're always on my case. Or they're always making fun of this or making fun of that about my weight or my height or my hair or my lack of hair. Or they're making fun of this, like my job, whatever it is. It's like always one thing after another. Wah, 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 wah. And that's kind of how it starts to sound, right? And we can think of somebody else and recognize it when somebody else is being critical. Is that true? Like, what are you picking on that for? What's the big deal with that? Or why are you saying things that are so hurtful, so mean? Like bite marks all over the place. But it's a little hard to recognize in ourselves. The series, after all, is not called Your Big Fat Mouth. Or their big fat mouth. It's what? My big fat mouth. And some of you have thought, well, this is just Pastor Len's confessions. Well, it is in part. But I think maybe some of you will recognize it in yourself if you think of things along these lines. When the other person takes a long time, she's slow. When I take a long time, I'm thorough. When the other person doesn't do it, he's lazy. But when I don't do it, I'm busy. When the other person says my pants make me look fat, they're rude. But when I say it, I'm just keeping it real. Their cut downs are mean. Mine are funny. We can see it, we can spot it in others, and we go, that's not right, that hurts. I've got bite marks all over me because of your criticism or your cut downs, but we don't always see it in ourselves. And so I want to take us to Numbers. It's a book in the Bible that we haven't spent a lot of time in, and probably one that you haven't read a whole lot, because the book of Numbers has a lot of numbers, a lot of just kind of names and things like that. But there are some really powerful stories in here as well. And so I want to look at one of those today. It's found in Numbers chapter 12, and I'd love for you to be able to follow along. You can grab a Bible and turn to the book of Numbers. It's the fourth book in the Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. And so we go to Numbers chapter 12, and we're going to begin with verse 1. Miriam, and if we go back to the series that we just finished a couple weeks ago, Miriam is Moses' sister. Most people, even if you haven't been in the church, you've at least heard of Moses and the Ten Commandments. Well, Miriam is his sister, and Miriam is a prophetess. We see in Exodus chapter 15. Miriam and Aaron, and we talked about Aaron in the last series a decent amount, because Aaron is Moses' brother. Aaron became a high priest and served in the tabernacle, which we talked about in the last series. And Aaron is also a brother of Moses. So Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses. Does this sound like any family that you know? And sadly, this can happen in church families as well. Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of his Cushite wife, for he had married a Cushite. But here's the real issue. It wasn't so much that was the issue. The real issue is underlining in verse 2. Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? That's not like, I really want to know. That's said with sarcasm. It is dripping wet with sarcasm. They asked, hasn't he also spoken through us? And the Lord heard this. I want to go back to that statement, talk against. What causes us to talk against others? What causes us to say biting remarks toward others? You can disagree with me, and maybe you can come up with maybe something else, but I want to suggest 3 things why we talk against others. First reason why I think some people will talk against others is because of pride. Because they feel superior to somebody else or to everybody else, and so they are very critical, and they'll cut down others because there's this sense of superiority. It may be due to finances, it may be due to how good they are at abiding by the law, serving the Lord, and somehow all of a sudden there's pride, which really goes opposite of having a heart for the Lord, but it can creep up, and it can come out of our heart and out of our mouth. And we become critical of others, judgmental towards others. I see this, and we need to pray for humility and ask God to humble our hearts. I think the second reason is insecurity. So the opposite spectrum of pride, insecurity. And so they pick on others, and so somehow by picking on others, we can kind of drag them down. We talked about this a little bit last week. We were talking about gossip and trying to feel better about ourselves by bringing others down because we don't feel very good about ourselves. And so if we can talk bad about somebody else and we can criticize someone else and they're not very good at this or they're not very good at that, and it's maybe not always like a major jab. Maybe somebody gets a new car to them, and they're pretty excited about it, and they drive up, and you go, that's not bad. I wouldn't choose that color, but nice car. Like, you had to get that little dig in there about the color, right? You couldn't just celebrate with them, probably because there's some jealousy going on. So you got pride and superiority, or you got insecurity and jealousy. The third reason why I think some people bite with their remarks, their cut downs, their criticisms, is because they've been hurt. Somehow, somewhere along the line, they've been hurt. Quite possibly somebody has said something to them at some point and hurt them and damaged them. And you've probably heard this before, but hurt people hurt people. If you see an animal that is hurting, especially like a dog that has been attacked, you want to help it, but what happens a lot of times? You'll get bit because hurt people hurt people. Hurt dogs, it's a natural response. They're just acting out of that. But whatever the case, it's important to understand that whether it's pride and we need to ask God to humble our hearts, whether it's insecurity and we need to find our joy and our peace and our identity and our security in who Christ is, and be content in what He's given us instead of being jealous of others, or whether we need to come before the Lord and ask God for a healing of our heart and a restoring of our souls. Whatever the case that would lead us to speak words of criticism or words of cut downs, it can't happen. Okay? Those aren't excuses, even because we've been hurt. It doesn't give us an excuse to hurt others. You see, the Lord heard this. And when He heard this, He called a family meeting. If you keep reading, and basically says, wait a minute, Moses hasn't done anything wrong. You just spoke against Moses, and in doing so, you spoke against me. And there's punishment for that. And so God strikes Miriam with leprosy. We'll pick it up in verse 10. When the cloud lifted from above the tent, so God comes down, meets with them, and then He goes away. Lifted from above the tent, Miriam's skin was leprous. Aaron sees that. Like, this is not good. Turned toward her. He said to Moses, please, my Lord, I ask you not to hold against us the sin we have so foolishly committed. I just want to draw attention to this foolishly. It's very similar to the word that we see about careless words that we've spoken. Have so foolishly committed. Verse 13, so Moses cried out to the Lord, please God, heal her. Please God, heal her. So we kind of work backwards on this and talk about what to do when you've received the bite marks. What to do when somebody else has bitten you. Somebody else has criticized you. They've been unfair. Just mean-spirited about it, picking on things, nitpicking, somebody's cutting you down, whatever the case would be. They're verbally abusing you. How do you respond? The first thing that I would say is don't bite back. What's the natural response when we're bitten? To bite back. But what happens when we bite back? Oftentimes, somebody else will bite back. This happens on social media often. Somebody says something, and then so somebody else pipes up, and then there's this just back and forth, right? So don't bite back. Proverbs 15:1 says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Don't bite back. The second thing that I would say is cry out to God. Moses gives us a great example. Moses cried out to God. He didn't bite back, didn't yell, you have no right, whatever. He cried out to God. Now, when we cry out to God, there can be a variety of ways that we cry out to God. We can cry out to God and say, God, I'm hurt. I can't believe they said that, and that just really hurt. And we just bring that before Him. We see that in the Psalms. David did that. Like, they're throwing these arrows at me, and this hurts. God, please heal me. Please restore and help me. We can cry out to God and say, God, help me to forgive them. We can cry out to God and say, I don't know what's in their heart that caused them to be so hateful or so hurtful, but please help them. Jesus encourages us to do that in Matthew chapter 5. He says, pray for those who persecute you. Pray for them. Not pray for them like that they're going to get their comeuppance, that they're going to get hurt or whatever, but pray for them. There's something in their heart that needs help. It might be pride. It might be insecurity. It might be that they've been hurt. You don't have to know what caused it, but pray for them. Pray for them. Cry out to God. So what happens, or what should we do when we've been the ones that left the bite marks? When we're like Aaron and Miriam. And Aaron gives us some pretty good help in that regard as well. And first thing that we see that Aaron does is he shows respect. He shows respect. He says, please, Lord. He demonstrates respect. This might be including look them in the eye when you're asking for forgiveness. Be ready and willing to listen. Mentioned social media earlier. Social media, you can't look somebody in the eye to say I'm sorry, and it's a little harder to demonstrate respect and all of that. I just want to throw a caution between these two parts of things. Social media is not the place to have verbal banter. Okay? Because most of the people that are going to see the social banter, the back and forth, won't even know who you are. They don't really know who you are. They don't know your character. They don't know where you're coming from, your background and different things. They don't know your sense of humor. They don't know that you're speaking with sarcasm because people don't understand how to use the sarcasm font on social media and everything. And so there's a lot of things that just get crossed up. I've seen it on pastors' pages and things that I'm a part of. Like, I don't really think they're saying something too much different, but boy, they are really getting heated, and you can see this taking place. And to understand, especially with social media, that's like using a microphone. A lot more people catch it. And it's a lot harder to take back and to control and to go back and say, hey, wait a minute, I messed up. I said something I shouldn't have done. I said something I shouldn't have said. So first thing, show respect. Second one, show remorse. Call it what it was, or what it is. It was sin. It was foolish. Aaron didn't beat around the bush and say, oh, we were just goofing around. We're, sorry about that. Aaron didn't say what we tend to say, and I hear this all the time, something along these lines. I'm sorry you were offended by what I said. Do you know how that really comes across when somebody says, I'm sorry you were offended by what I said. That basically is saying, this is how I interpret it. I'm sorry that you're such a little baby that your feelings got hurt by what I said. That's how I interpret. When somebody says, and I hear somebody apologize on the internet or on TV or something, I'm sorry if anybody was offended by what I said. I'm not really sorry for what I said. I'm just sorry if I offended you because you're weak-skinned or whatever. It's not. They're not really remorseful, in my opinion. At least it doesn't sound that way. Okay, so show respect and show remorse. Let's take a look at the Apostle Paul. He writes a couple different passages about bite marks. He says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. This word that he uses here in Ephesians chapter 4, this word unwholesome, is the word sapros. It means rotten, putrid, worthless. If you look up the Greek word that's used here, sapros, it's also the same root word that is used in Matthew chapter 12, Luke chapter 6, when Jesus is talking about a good tree bearing good fruit and a bad tree bearing bad fruit. And then he goes right into the conversation about the good man brings up good from his heart, where the bad man, the evil man, brings up evil from his. It's the same root word. Don't let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. Then in Galatians chapter 5, verses 14 through 15, he says, for the entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command. Love your neighbor as yourself. If you bite and devour each other, watch out, or you will be destroyed by each other. Some pretty significant warnings that Paul gives us. This statement, love your neighbor as yourself, we know that as like the second greatest commandment. God says the greatest commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, body, and strength. The second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, love your neighbor as yourself is very similar to something else that's pretty common. And even those that don't go to church, don't claim Jesus or anything, they've heard this statement and probably have even said this statement. Treat others the way you want to be treated. Or do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Do you know who said that? Jesus. Jesus says that in Luke chapter 6. Just a little before saying, out of the overflow of his heart, his mouth speaks. Jesus says, love your neighbor as yourself. Or he says, do to others as you would have them do to you. So the first thing when we talk about how to stop biting others is trade places. Trade places. Well, what do I mean by trade places? How would you want someone to speak to you? You're getting ready to speak to them. How would you want them to speak to you? Trade places. Do to others as you would have them do to you. Speak to others as you would have them speak to you. Would I like to be given the benefit of the doubt before I get chewed out? I would. Or at least listen to. At least give me the opportunity to explain why I did what I did. Or why I didn't do what I didn't do. I think some other things. How would you respond to you if you were in their shoes? If you came to, if they came to you, how are you going to respond? Or how would they respond if you came to them? Trade places. Is there a relationship already? That's why one of the things I don't get into the back and forth on Facebook or other places online is because there's not the relationship. There's not the trust. There's not the understanding. Like, you don't know me, I don't know you, so it's a lot harder to have that conversation. I don't look at trying to correct people online because they don't know me. And so they're not very likely to listen to what I would have to say because there's not the relationship that's been established. There's not the respect there. Proverbs 27:6 says, wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses. Is there that relationship? If I doubt that they would respond well to me because we don't have a very good relationship, or I wouldn't respond very well to them because we don't have a very good relationship, they're much likely to not respond very well to me if I'm trying to correct, trying to criticize, if I'm cutting down. There's some people that we can banter a little bit back and forth because we know each other and we've had that relationship, right? There's others that you don't cut down because you don't have that kind of a relationship. So trade places. One of the things that I like to think about is, when would I want to hear what I have to share or what I need to share? Because understand, there are times when we do need to say some things that could hurt, right? Wounds from a friend can be trusted, and so there are times when I need to hear things. There are times when my wife needs to say, we need to have a little talk and ask some questions and kind of, what were you thinking, or why did you do this, and that hurt my feelings, or this or that. And there's some things that hurt. They're not said in a critical, harsh way. She's not being mean about it. She's actually helping me. She's looking out for me. She has my best interests at heart. And so she says things that it may not sit real well in some ways because I'm embarrassed or I'm ashamed. Like, ooh, I didn't realize I hurt you in that way. But I need to hear those things. Okay? I need her to tell me. I need her to communicate that to me. I need her to tell me if I've got a booger hanging out. Like, help me with this, right? But timing can also be pretty good, right? Pretty important. Like, when would I want it? How would I want this to be communicated? There are some things, and we just had to work through this and kind of learn kind of our schedules and different things, and when maybe we're more receptive and better in a position to receive something correction. Okay, it's not criticism, it's correction, it's help, it's for our benefit. Okay, so not everything that's beneficial for us is just encouragement, like, hey, way to go. Sometimes it's, hey, let's do better next time. But I can receive that much better at different times of the day or different parts of the week. Right before bed is not my best time to have those kind of discussions. There are some people, like, right when they get home from work is not the best time to have that discussion. And some of you learn that, and like, yeah, absolutely right. Like, we need to just kind of give a break and give me half an hour, 2 hours or something, whatever the case is. Like, figure that out. How would I want to be treated in this situation? Do I want to get confronted with something as soon as I walk in the door? So then I don't confront them as soon as they walk in the door. I wouldn't want to be confronted on something right before I have a big thing going on, like preaching on a Sunday morning. So I'm not going to look to confront them right before something that's big in their life and bring something up. Like, I'm going to think about what's going to be most helpful for them. What's going to help put them in the best position where they can receive this, and I can say it in a way, and we can have a discussion about it and come to a good conclusion. Not just let them have it and then move on. Take a chomp and then move on. Okay? So trade places. The second thing that'll help us not bite others, not hurt others by what we say. Pray. Pray. The psalmist gives us such a great example of this in Proverbs 27:6. It says, I don't have the reference here, but he says, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing to you, my rock and my redeemer. It's actually from Psalms. May the words of my mouth, the meditation of my heart be pleasing to you, my rock and my redeemer. Pray, God, I want these words to be pleasing to you. There are some things that maybe need to be said. We need to address some things. But Lord, help me to say them in a way that is pleasing to you, honoring to you, helpful to them. Lord, give me wisdom with my words. Because words of wisdom are helpful. They're beneficial. They're not lacking. They're not careless. They're not thoughtless. They're not unwholesome. So pray about it. God, I want to respond in a way that's honoring to you. Here's the thing goes, right? Sometimes we don't have a lot of time. But then you can still send up a quick arrow. Lord, give me wisdom. Sometimes we may have to bite our tongue so we don't bite back. But it's better to have bite marks on your tongue than to leave bite marks on somebody else. So I don't know where you're at in all of this. I don't know if more so you need kind of just restoration and healing because you've just received a lot of bite marks and you need some healing in that. But maybe there's also this understanding that because you've received bite marks, you've also given some bite marks. And maybe you need to go and show some respect and show some remorse and own your part of it. It's possible that there are those that are here today that you just, boy, Pastor, you just hammered me all over the place. Because I realize that I'm that way with my wife, I'm that way with my kids, I'm that way with my coworkers. Here's the thing I want us to understand. We think that, like, when we say hurtful things, like somehow maybe that makes us better, like because we have a sense of superiority or we have a sense of inferiority. There's jealousy, and somehow if we can cut them and we can say things that are hurtful, like that'll bring them down and kind of bring them to the same level as us, or maybe because we've been hurt that we can hurt others. But I want us to understand there's nobody that looks at somebody else and goes, wow, that's somebody I want to hang out with. The way that they just yell at other people, that looks so fun. I think I want to be their best friend. The way that they just are so sharp-witted and just cut people to the core, make fun of somebody's hair, and the way that they can come up with things. Like when I was in junior high, I was getting ready to walk into my U.S. history class. And one of the most popular guys in school says, "Hey, Lynn, I ate cereal out of your hair this morning." What? You see, I had a bowl haircut back in the day, and my bowl haircut was cut by my mom, and it looked like she had used a bowl that had been in a microwave too long. Bless her heart. She tried. I didn't want to be his best friend. There may be others that kind of thought that it was funny or whatever, but that there's nothing attractive to that. There's nothing that goes, ooh, man, sign me up. I want to hang out with those people. Because if they're going to cut others, guess what? At some point, they're going to cut you. Because out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. And there is either pride or jealousy or insecurity, or they've been hurt. And we can't allow that to continue to be in us. And so whatever the case would be, I would ask and encourage you, pray about that and seek God's help. Whether it's humbling yourself before Him, whether it's finding your true identity and security in who Christ is and who you are in Him, or whether it's finding healing in the name of Jesus, that you don't have to be what others have said of you. Maybe they said you were trash. Maybe they said you'll never make it. You'll never live up to anything. You'll never become anything. I don't know what's been said, but don't let that define you. Don't let that be your identity. Let Jesus heal that broken heart. Because if you don't, you're very likely to cause pain and hurt to somebody else sometime down the road. So as you just kind of soak in that, reflect on that, I'm going to invite our praise team to make their way forward, our ushers to come forward as well. We're going to sing a new song, or at least new to probably most of you today, called Living Hope. And you may want to just kind of stay seated. It's up to you. Some great words that are in this song. One that we'll be planning to sing on Easter Sunday and celebrating the resurrection and the hope that we have in Jesus Christ. Heavenly Father, we are thankful, Lord, for your goodness and your mercy in our lives. Understanding, Lord, that this is a tough